welcome back, listeners and viewers. We're here with another episode of the Power9 podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert. Today's guest is the sales homie himself. As the founder of his firm, he is devoted to helping salespeople and teams identify growth obstacles and bring solutions to their challenges. Let's get crazy with my friend, Nate Zoellner. Nate, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, what's happening, man?
Yeah, man.
How are
you? Good to have you on finally. I'm a sales guy by trade back in the day. You're a sales guy now, full-fledged, training people and coaching people up and a little bit of fractional stuff. So I think this is going to be a fun little podcast, man.
I am really looking forward to it. Absolutely. It's gonna be great.
Yeah. And we're recording on a Friday. It's the middle of summer. What a great way to kick off the weekend. So this thing drops on a Thursday. So those of you that are listening, hopefully it's a beautiful day for you.
It is hot. I went for a walk before we started and I'm still sweating. It's so humid out right now.
All right, good. Well, let's get this sweat cranked up another notch then.
There we go. Let's go. Let's get in the sauna.
Right? Yeah.
Here we go.
When we get to 9 questions, we'll crank the sweat up a little bit more. Yeah, nice. Well, let's dive into your journey, man. So, it's cool because we're roughly about the same age, and you've done some really cool things in your career. I'll get into the career stuff. We have so many like intertwining parts of like where we could have probably cross-pollinated in the past.
Yep.
So it's fun. We've got a lot of mutual friends. So tell me a little bit about paint me a little bit of a picture of what it was like to grow up, like, pre-high school, family dynamics and maybe some of the things that you were into when you were a kid.
Yeah. So I don't tell many folks this unless you're a close friend and get a Christmas card. So apparently everybody listening is now going to get a Christmas card.
Yeah, right.
But I'm originally from Wisconsin. So I was born and raised in a lot of small towns in Wisconsin, born in Wapaka, Appleton, Oshkosh area. My parents were two farm kids that met at Eau Claire for school, for college themselves. So my kidhood was traveling from different small town to small town to go see grandmas and grandpas on the east side by Fond du Lac, Green Bay, or on the west side by the Eau Claire side from my mom's side. And yeah, before I was 11, moved around 4 or 5 different times. So my mom was an elementary school teacher. My dad was actually a band director out of college. About 5 years into their being wedding or married, I guess, and everything else, they decided, well, we both probably shouldn't be teachers if we want to have a family. So my dad got out of teaching, being a band director, and went into insurance sales. So I often tell people that I'm a true byproduct of my parents, both biologically, but then I guess everything else wise, meaning I love coaching. I love obviously business and sales and different things, maybe influences from my dad. And obviously the coaching side, teaching, slowing down, listening, understanding from my mom's side on the teaching side. But yeah, moved to Eagan in the early 90s then, landed as a middle school kid, did all the different fun things you would expect to do in a growing suburb at the time. People curious, maybe I'm not a Packers fan because I grew up in Wisconsin. When I moved in Eagan in 91, just a quick sports lesson for those that might not be up on it. So in 91, the Packers had just drafted a guy named Tony Mandarich, an offensive line bust from Michigan State, I believe. And they had a quarterback named Don Majkowski, the Magic Man, who was not Brett Favre. Brett Favre came in, of course, a couple years after that. So anyway, the Packers weren't anything great in the 70s and the 80s. So transitioning in the early 90s to be a Vikings fan, where they played in this super cool, which was a dump, of course, but the super cool, big, huge Metrodome as a kid was awesome. I was a baseball fan first. So coming into the Twins universe in 1991, naturally was a really great thing. So it was an easy transition, and my family wasn't a big, huge, hey, we're diehard Wisconsin Packer fans or whatever else. The Bucks, Timberwolves, I mean, that was kind of a wash at the time. And no one played hockey in Wisconsin. So I was not a hockey player.
Yeah, that's so weird.
It is weird, right? And so coming here, the North Stars in the early 90s were great, right? Before obviously the implosion, literally, in 93 or 4, whatever that was. So yeah, the last thing I'll say on that is a lot of, I feel, what I've gotten out of that as an adult now is, as a kid, it wasn't any fun, right? To always move and have to make and break friends. But I think as an adult, having to gone through that helps me be more of a confident, outgoing, curious, learning type individual, because I had to be that as a kid, even though I didn't like doing it at the time.
So I want to go a couple of different directions with some of that. One of the things we talk about is, I have a Packer story too that I want to run by you real quick, because it is the exact opposite of yours. And so We always touch on nature versus nurture and paradigm
Yeah.
shifting experiences, right? And which push people into certain directions, whether it be entrepreneurship or leadership or whatever. So, the nature versus nurture thing, I think it's fascinating that you've got someone like your dad that goes from teaching, makes a conscious decision to go from education into a selling environment. But I'll tell you, so I used to manage salespeople. I used to lead salespeople at the company that I was a part owner of and things like that. That we had a couple of people that were ex-educators, and they were some of the best salespeople because one, they were trained to teach kids, and teaching is sales, which is fascinating,
Yep.
and then two, I think just the patience level and the curiosity that you need to have to be a teacher transitions really nice to even some of the things that you said. And so, do you think that some of that rubbed off on you at a really early age of like maybe a combination of both risk tolerance of, your dad jumping from a very stable environment, albeit,
Yep.
terribly low
Yep.
paying,
Yep.
into the professional world? And then like, did you think any of that kind of played a role in any of that, watching that from a distance as a kid?
I think it did inherently, maybe not recognizing it as a kid, of course, but as I mentioned before, you grow up through the middle school, the high school, the formative years, getting into college or whatever you might do after you're 18, 19, 20 years old. I think I recognize it more at that age, looking back upon, where I had sort of come from. Because once we got to Egan, it was this whole thing about, hey guys, we don't have to move anymore. Because of course, small town rural kids don't understand. You move to a big city, every time dad either changed a job or expanded or changed businesses, we were moving to the next small town in Wisconsin. It was literally every 2.5 or 3 years. So then it was the whole thing like, hey guys, we only got to move one more time. We're moving to the metropolitan area, the Twin Cities. We're like, wow, this is cool, but what does that mean? So I feel like, to answer your question, I sort of got there after the fact, meaning being able to sort of be old enough to sort of look back and recognize and realize, wow, there was some risk tolerance there. Wow, there was
Yeah.
some, and even listening to my parents talk as they were, aging, but also me growing up too. I just remember the conversations about, mom's day job teaching was, the steady paycheck, and dad's was the highs and the lows, right? So, oh, we're going to Disney this year because dad did really, really well, or oh, we're not doing it, whatever that was like. So I think a lot of it came from just, again, being an adult or turning into the adult through those formative years, recognizing where we came from, and all as a family being thankful that we didn't have to move anymore, and we can actually kind of put down roots and start to have relationships like we would experience with others, where it's like, oh yeah, I grew up, in the same house that my mom lived in, or I mean, all those things we never had or experienced. It was always one small town to the next. So yeah, I think for sure there's an element of seeing and incorporating that into, I guess, what I've sort of become in a way.
Yeah. All right. So here's my fun Packers story, which is the complete
Okay.
opposite of yours.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Twin Cities. My aunt and uncle lived in Milwaukee, outside of Milwaukee, Franklin, Oak Creek, Cudahy area. And so my uncle had season tickets for the Green Bay Packers, but he only had county stadium tickets. That was back in the day when they used to do 4-4. So 1991, so my dad was not a big football fan. He didn't really care less about football, but 1991, my uncle got 4 tickets, to the Vikings-Packer game at County Stadium. Don Mikowski was the quarterback. All the things you just explained. So my dad and I pile in the van, the minivan, and we drive to Milwaukee. We get 2 tickets. My 2 cousins get 2 tickets. So I think I'm 14 at the time, maybe 15. So I am, kind of in my formidable age. I loved football, but nobody else around me did. And so we got there it was a noon game. We got there at 6 a.m. and we tailgated. And that was the first time I ever got drunk. And I had the time of my life tailgating. We went into the game. All 4 of us were not in any condition to do anything, much less go to a football game. And like being 14 years old and like having beers with, my dad just let me do my thing, which, everyone who's judging me right now, calm down.
Yeah.
But it was the greatest time of my life. And from that point forward, I was a diehard Packer fan. Grew up in Minnesota. I love the Timberwolves. I love the Twins. I love the Wild. I love all that other stuff. But it just, you have experiences like that, and it depends on your surroundings. And so it's a complete, total opposite of your experience coming from Wisconsin to Minnesota. But I don't know, man. Like, I just think it is a little bit about the experiences that are going to drive some of that fanhood or whatever, right? So no judging on the whole Packer versus Vikings.
No judging at all. But it makes complete sense that you were in Wisconsin and you were 14, 15 down in beers. I mean, that makes total total sense, right? Because
Oh,
that's what
oh
happens.
God, it was nuts. I could do a whole podcast on that, but we'll spare our listeners. All right. So then,
Okay.
as we transition into your high school years and stuff like that, what were you into? Like, were you an athlete? Did you get into any other kind of things?
Yeah, so I was the sporto kid, elementary, middle school, leading into high school. Again, back to that transition period of coming from Wisconsin, Minnesota. So baseball was my sport. I kind of fell into it, but because at least back in those times, you played everything, right? So I played
Yeah,
football,
right.
I played basketball, I played baseball. I did everything. It wasn't just specialization like it is nowadays, it seems. So yeah, I was a true sporto. Again, moved to the Twin Cities in the early 90s. In middle school, I was a big traveling baseball guy. So I grew up in Egan. So did all the traveling A-League team stuff. That was a lot of fun. I was a pitcher, loved to pitch, played first base otherwise. And the third spot would be somewhere in the outfield. Loved what baseball meant from like the team aspect. I loved pitching because there was an element of controlling the game. I loved playing first base because there was an element of always being involved in the game, stuff like that. I was always, I guess, kind of in a way, sort of relating it to business. I always wanted to be engaged and always kind of wanted to have tentacles on things and being able to impact and influence. But yeah, so sports was my thing. So then middle school. So anyway, back to my dad being a band director, right? So when I was a third grader, I have one younger sister. She went through the same thing I did. But when we were in third grade, dad put us in piano lessons. Diehard believer of what that does emotionally, physically, mentally, how it can help develop brains, all those sort of really good, cool things. And did that for 3 years until I convinced them not that I want to do it anymore. But then that led me to then when we moved to Egan in 91, going into sixth grade, was going to go into the band program. And so I'll never forget this. My dad and I went to the middle school, Dakota Hills Middle School in Egan. And I won't mention the band directors' names, I guess, but at the same time, it's all good experiences, but I'll just keep out of it. Went to the middle school during the summertime before school would start. And hi, this is Nate, or this is Nathan at the time. I'm Scott Zoellner, my dad. Would love to get him into band. Oh, did he have band in fifth grade like we do here? No, he didn't, but he did take piano lessons and whatever. And oh, well, I'm not really quite sure. Everyone does fifth grade. He'll be behind a year, all this sort of stuff. And long story short, convinced them to, I guess, let me be in the program. Well, if anyone comes from a musical background, whether it be choir, band, whatever else, well, there's usually chair placements in your category or in what you're playing. So I was a percussionist, drummer. That's what I chose to do. And so the kid that came in the summertime that they hardly let into band ended up being first chair after the first, trimester of sixth grade band or something like that. So it's kind of like, there you go. A little work ethic goes a long way. But so I got involved into music, and I just, back to your nurture and nature versus nurture question, I really felt it was the time and the place and sort of a lucky opportunity that I was there at that time, because the band directors were developing an indoor drumline program. So anybody that's familiar with the marching band worlds or different stuff like that, which I can get into a little bit later, it's indoor percussion. So it's like percussion ensemble kind of on steroids, where you're marching around, you're performing, you're creating a show, a production, if you will. And the couple of band directors that were at the middle school were on the cusp of starting this at Egan High School. So I was asked as a seventh grader if I wanted to participate. Me not knowing what it meant to have commitments, they would say, oh, we have rehearsal Monday night, Thursday night. We have competition Saturday. As a kid, I was like, that sounds like a whole lot of not fun. Like, I don't want to do all that practicing. So I turned them down. And then I ended up going and seeing a couple shows and productions as a seventh grader that year. I was like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? This is amazing. This is cool. So then I could not wait to start doing it my eighth grade year. So long story short, this is all transitioning over sports world. Band world is kind of becoming, musical world's becoming an influence. And I get to about my sophomore, junior year of high school, and I had to make that decision, right? Like, what am I really going to focus on? And I was a good baseball player, but it wasn't going to go anywhere, So I was like, you know what? Music is really kind of where my heart was sitting. The organizations of it, the creativeness of it, the spatial awareness. I mean, people always make an analogy of if you're on a football team and just the analogies to what that means for development, for teamwork, for all those sort of things. Well, I have the same experience in the band side, where you're playing one instrument. You might have 2 or 3 other people playing that same instrument, playing that same part. And then all of a sudden you have 30 other people, 40 other people around you playing totally different instruments. In this instance, in a gymnasium, in some huge indoor environment where you all have to play in sync and be on the same time frame together, musicality, dynamics, the whole thing. Take that same conversation. I'll go outside, say on a football field from a marching band perspective, it's a whole different listening environment. So all of your senses basically are being rocked as you're going through practicing and performing, and you really have an acute sense of awareness and all the different things happening around you. So yeah, the formative piece again from the music side is something that I take great pride in, because I loved doing it. After I graduated high school and was getting out of education myself, I actually went back and then taught, and I was an instructor on different staffs and different high schools for almost 20 years out of high school. So
Cool.
my early 20s and 30s were spent day job, suit and tie, sales job of something, right? And then nights and weekends, jeans and hoodie, going out and hanging with the kids, doing some drums, doing some fun stuff. So that was my life for literally 20 years. It was a lot of fun.
Wow. So after you transitioned out of high school, where did you end up going to college?
Went to the U downtown here, Twin Cities. Go Gophers. So, but yeah, it was my first year was, graduated high school in 98. So my first year would have been fall 98, 99. The U was still on what they called quarters, even though there were 3 of them, not 4 of them. So then my sophomore year, they transitioned to be a semester school like kind of everybody else, but lived in the dorms my freshman year, T Hall, Territorial Hall. Anybody that's from the U, go T Hall. Yeah. Stadium Village, that whole area was so different back then. Obviously, we'd go downtown. We would take Campus Connector, the buses, to go to the Metrodome for football games. There wasn't the stadium on campus. You'd walk. We would walk to like Williams Arena or Mariucci for hockey and basketball, stuff like that. But just a completely different experience. But the cool thing I am happy that I got to experience was, back to your comment of drinking in a bar, Sally's, some of the really old established bar establishments that are obviously gone now. I was able to be there during those times. So it was less commercial than it is nowadays. But yeah, went to the U of M, loved it. I looked at Mankato, looked at St. Cloud, looked at U of M or UW Madison, looked at St. John's. That was way too expensive, at least for where my family was at. And so it was one of those deals where it's like, you know what? I wanted to stay close because I was doing the drumline teaching thing. And in Eagan, I kind of associated, like, the U of M was 20 minutes from Eagan. I was in a whole different world, even though I was still only 25 minutes away from home. So it was just a good match for where I was at.
Did you do anything musically with the University of Minnesota besides some of the teaching and stuff that you were doing, or did you just?
I didn't. No, I never did like the U band or never did the marching band stuff. I knew a lot of people that did it because I had friends. I'd go to all the frat parties at the U frat house or whatever that was at the time as a kid. But no, never did. I loved doing. So I marched in what they called Drum and Bugle Corps. So it was groups outside of the high school world. Some were affiliated with colleges, some weren't. But it was an audition process. You had to audition to make it. You paid to be in these groups, but then you traveled all summer long and performed at shows all across the country. So for 3 summers, the summer after my senior year of high school and the next first couple of years of college, I was gone all summer. I was performing in groups, riding in tour buses, sleeping on gym floors, performing for all these people every night, literally leaving a show at midnight, driving 3, 4, 5 hours at night, getting it at 4, 5, 6 in the morning, going on the gym for a couple hours, getting up, go doing rehearsal for 7 hours, rinse and repeat, go do the whole thing, go to the next small town, do the next show. It was great. And for people that were into that world and were fans of those activities, you were kind of like a rock star. It was really kind of cool, right? So it was a unique kind of sub world, but I did that. But then when I came back to the school year, I loved kind of washing my hands, not doing active instrumentation band, if you will, still doing the teaching thing on the side. But I loved just being a kid, doing all the college stuff and just not worrying about the band thing.
Sweet. All right, let's take a quick break here. I want to get into your career, get into the meat and potatoes of that. And so let's take a few minutes here. We're going to listen to some of our community supporters, which help make this podcast and are kind of a little bit of the lifeblood of Coalition9 community, along with our members. And Nate is one of our community supporters as well as one of our members. And so let's listen to what Sales Homie has to say about what they do, and we're going to dig into that a little bit more after we get back from this break.
Let's go.
Tell me if this sounds familiar. Your business is having challenges with adding revenue, or you're ready for quicker growth and scale. Your sales team lacks a coach or mentor to help guide and excel their production, and you're not quite sure who the best resource is for sourcing and replacing sales professionals on your team. When you're looking for a company that provides sales solutions that drive growth, look up Sales Homie. Sales Homie is the premier fractional CRO or VP sales agency, additionally offering sales recruiting and placement services, sales leadership coaching, and sales team training programs. Don't put your business at risk with low revenues and uninspired sales professionals. Learn more about Sales Homie by visiting their website at saleshomie.com. Sales Homie, sales solutions that drive growth.
Regardless if you're a startup just figuring things out or a medium-sized organization with a full team, having a legal partner by your side is crucial. Seiler Law is fiercely loyal to their clients and are passionate about removing headaches and roadblocks that can pop up during the growth of your business. Whether you need general outside counsel, are planning a business transaction, or even need someone to guide you through the estate planning process, the team at Seiler Law are the advocates for you. Visit seilerlaw.com to learn more. Seiler Law, where experience meets pragmatism.
Are you a local business owner looking to take your enterprise to the next level? Look no further than Security Bank and Trust Company, your partner in growth. Our dedicated team of smart, experienced bankers understand the unique challenges and opportunities facing businesses like yours. With personalized financial solutions and expert advice, we're here to help you succeed every step of the way. From tailored business loans to cutting-edge digital banking services, Security Bank and Trust is committed to your success. Experience the difference a local bank can make. Visit us today at any of our convenient locations or online at security-banks.com. Security Bank and Trust, growing together.
United Healthcare is dedicated to helping people live healthier lives and making the health system work better for everyone by simplifying the healthcare experience, meeting consumer health and wellness needs, and sustaining trusted relationships with care providers. UHC is continually focused on building a modern, high-performing health system via improved access, affordability, outcomes, and experiences. With a network of over 1.6 million physicians and healthcare professionals in over 6,000 hospitals, United Healthcare is dedicated to connecting employers and their employees to better health by offering quality benefits designed for affordability. For more information, visit United Healthcare at www.uhc.com. United Healthcare, helping people live healthier lives. Every year brings new challenges for Minnesota business leaders, and USI Insurance is here to take the pressure off of the employee benefits decision. Having a local presence with national resources, USI combines a client-centric culture with leading-edge technical resources so you can make an informed decision on your benefits investment. The USI team has been deeply committed to investing into our local communities and utilizes their expertise to provide solutions you can count on to protect your greatest asset, your employees. USI has been partnering with Twin Cities businesses for decades, and they would welcome the opportunity to do the same for you. Visit USI.com to learn how USI's approach to risk management and employee benefits delivers customized, actionable solutions with bottom-line impact.
Verseek Search and Consulting is thrilled to support Coalition9 for an exciting year ahead. Verseek is a Minnesota-based, high-performance recruiting firm that specializes in interim solutions, direct hire, and executive leadership search. Our team of experienced professionals and seasoned leaders across various areas of expertise and industries have been in your shoes. Your company's success hinges on the capacity of your people, and few areas of your business are more critical than your finance and accounting team. You need talent who can move the needle while winning the trust of leaders and stakeholders in your organization. Your people make it possible. Verseek can help connect you with the talented candidates within finance and accounting for consulting or direct hire needs, as well as within other industry areas in executive search, direct hire, and interim solutions. People are the ultimate business advantage. Find your people together with Verseek and make the best possible for your business. Learn more by visiting Verseek.com and by following Verseek on LinkedIn.
All right, we're back here with Nate Zoellner, the sales homie. So Nate, we heard a little bit about your trajectory as you progressed through your childhood into college. Now I kind of want to dig into your career a little bit. So what was your first, I'm going to use air quotes here for those that are listening, those that are watching on YouTube, air quotes. What was your first real job out of college?
Yeah, so my first real job was selling telecommunication services. So I worked for a company called TDS Metrocom. They had an office in Eagan. Eagan is a central theme, obviously, of kind of where I grew up. It wasn't intended to be that I needed to have a job in Eagan. They just happened to be in Eagan. Mm-hmm. It was great at the time because when I took that job and I graduated from the U in 0203, I would go home and have lunch and see my mom once in a while too, because she was on summer break because she was a teacher and whatever else. So there was just some unique, cool things about, again, kind of that next small step without having it have to be a huge step. And again, back from that formative conversation. But anyway, yeah, TDS Metrocom, it was one of those sales roles where, I mean, a couple of stories I'll share with you. One of those sales roles where you don't know what you're getting into. You're literally still a kid coming out of college. I had worked at a Sprint PCS at the time, Sprint retail cell phone store, ending college, which then exposed me to, I guess, telecommunications. And I realized that obviously when I was going to get out of school, I didn't want to work in retail. Like that'd be lame. So I wanted to get that first, what I could, call big boy job. And I'll never forget, my salary was $32,000 a year. It was one of those deals where I think I still have my offer letter and stuff too, but I still have old business cards. But it was one of my first exposures and realizations of a couple of things. One, me being a 23, 4, 5-year-old kid, I had the realization quite early on. I'm like, wow, from that personal growth, personal drive piece going, I'm coworkers. I have peers that are 40, 45, 50, 55. And I'm just like, man, this is the real world, huh? Not that the job was beneath me, but at the same time, I knew quite soon, I'm like, I don't want to be working this job when I'm that age. I don't know what that means from a developmental perspective or whatever else, but I'm like, man, no, like, cool for now. This is great. This is fun, but I don't know what that means or what that meant. I'm not the psychologist, right? But it was one of those just takeaways where I just never will forget that feeling. Like, I've always had this mantra of building and taking steps forward and learning more and creating more and doing more. And to then see peers of mine that were literally twice my age working in a job like that, I just sort of looked at it cross-eyed, like, man, I think there's more to life than something like this.
So let me just jump in there. So I share a little bit of that same journey. My first sales job was selling office furniture and office supplies, basically door to door. My first base salary was $35,000 in 2003. Like all this, and then it switched to commission only after 1 year.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the same things. And I did actually have a little bit of that same vibe of like, looking at some of the people that were my peers and were much older than me. I think I can pick out, I don't want to lead the witness here, but can you pick out one thing that you think differentiated you and maybe your mindset than some of the people that were maybe 20 years your senior that were comfortable in that role?
I always wanted more things, and I don't mean things as material, but I wanted more. And not to lead the witness of maybe what's next from your questioning, but I envisioned doing business for myself someday. I envisioned doing a lot of things, and a role like this, it was the first place where I was able to see structure, meaning I was a rep. I had a manager. The manager had a VP. It was a part of this, right? Just those first exposures to those things. And then again, looking back to then relating it to my family and going, well, my dad is an independent business owner, his insurance, he does his own thing. And like, how does that fit within this selling ecosystem world?
I think if I could summarize that and maybe just, if I could, push it into one word, do you think drive, like you were just maybe wired from a drive standpoint a little bit differently?
I think so. And I think I still am. I've always had a little bit of self-anxiety, meaning, am I doing well enough in what I'm doing? And I think that's helped to drive me, even though I've had bosses or peers or whoever else over the years that were like, oh, Nate is no one we would ever consider wanting to move away from, or, those type of conversations. But in my own mind, I'm always like, am I doing enough? I can do more. I want to do more, whether it was make more money, whether it was, climb a ladder, whatever that was, have more stature, have more tenure, or even have more knowledge, understanding, right? Coming in, not knowing a thing about this and feeling really kind of hindered because you can't necessarily talk shop with everybody around the proverbial water cooler because you don't know what you don't know. So I think it was all those things kind of played into the drive piece, certainly. Yeah, I bought my first house with my first job, right? Like I had all these goals I wanted to achieve. I wanted to be a young guy that was, building something for himself. And again, I've painted the picture that I came from a great formative family, and I did, but we weren't super well off. We're just very middle class and whatever. And if I was given anything, it was an opportunity to go to school. And everything else I've done is what I've built, and I've always had that drive.
Yeah, that's evident. All right, so you spent 2.5 years at TDS. You worked your cube mates with my buddy James Loeffler, who's now president of Loeffler Companies, and
no big deal.
So, right, no big deal. And so and that's about the time that I became buddies with him. So we could have another one of those opportunities where we could have became friends if the stars would have aligned. So then, after you spent a few years there, 2.5 years there, where'd you jump to from there?
Yeah, so quick Loeffler story first. The reason why we were cube buddies is there was a contest in the office, and it was a typical suburban 2-3 story, office building. And there were obviously windows around the outside of the building and cube farm in the middle of these big open spaces, right? And so I don't remember, I think he was there before I was, but we were cube buddies for at least 1.5 years, I think, right? We got window seats. So we got to sit, by a window on our cubes. The only reason I got to do that is because, my manager's name was Mike Johnson at the time. I think there was some sort of contest about if you can, be the highest seller for a month or two or something, you can move and have a cube spot. So that's how I got to ended up sitting next to James. But yeah, it was probably a couple of years or something. And James is great. As you know, we keep in touch a couple of times a year, stuff like that. But yeah, so after TDS, I had back to my band world. I was teaching and doing obviously the band stuff in the off hours. And I had a mentor I came across, and he was the guy that actually helped me buy my first house. His name is Larry. And Larry was doing real estate full time. This is again 2005, 2006. So we all know what's pending around the corner to this conversation. But he was flipping homes, buying and selling, holding long term. And I got the real estate itch. I got the real estate bug. And it was my first interaction with my own self development on, gosh, entrepreneurism seems kind of unique and pretty cool. Like what Larry's doing, like he doesn't have to go to the office for 8:15 Monday morning meetings. He like, just those differences of what entrepreneurism means versus say working a corporate job. And so long story short, after 2.5 years at TDS, after a pretty good experience, I quit and I started a real estate company. I'll never forget my mom, having a conversation with her, and she's like, "You're doing what? You're quitting your job?" So I bought this place in St. Paul. My dad, and this was October that I quit in 2005. Bought this place. My dad and I went and gutted it Thanksgiving weekend of 2005. I sold it end of February of 2006. A couple months later, after rehabbing it, hired a couple contractors, made like 40 grand. I'm like, I could do this like 3, 4, 5 times. Like, this is great. This is cool. And so my business model that I'd set up was that it was buy one or be searching for one to buy, have one under development or in the fixing process, and have one on the market for constant cash flow. And had a lot of fun doing it for, like I said, about 1.5 years until everything that we now know was happening, meaning 2008 happens and just stuff falls all underneath itself. So I was a 25, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid stuck with all of this real estate. I had 5 properties when I jumped out of my business and went back into a corporate sales job. Again, knowing what we know now, just stuff wouldn't sell. The unique thing was I didn't get into it to be a landlord then. I knew grand picture, wanted to have an inspection division, an appraisal company, buy and hold. I'd be a realtor myself to represent friends and family, doing all these things, all the things feeding the funnel, I guess, if you will. But I got stuck with all this real estate. So I had to be a landlord overnight. So I rented them all out. Unfortunately, because they were all rehabbed, they were nice, right? So they're fixed up and there wasn't a lot of tedious work on my part. But I was then the kid for the next handful of years working my corporate job, still doing the hoodies and jeans at night with the band thing, backed into the corporate world, suit and tie, selling something during the day, and finding time in the middle to go support these properties. I'll never forget throwing lawnmowers in the back of I had little 3 Series BMWs for a while, throwing a lawnmower in the back of my car, trunk open, going down Cedar Avenue in South Minneapolis to duplex because I had to mow the lawn. It's just kind of like one of those pieces where you're just like, it was one of my big lessons of learning in life of going, you know what? No one's going to do stuff for me. Like, these are all things I've created for myself, whether that be positive, negative. I have to be accountable for my own, what. And it was another one of those big moments for me in entrepreneurship, being like, this is cool. This is great. But now I have, I've made my bed. Slept in my bed. Now I got to make it too, kind of a thing.
Yeah. So, did you eventually divest from those properties, or do you still have some real estate?
So I still own one outside of our primary home, but I still own my first duplex that I bought. So my first home I actually bought was a duplex. Again, back to my mentor, realtor Larry. He's asking me what I want. I'm like, well, I want to buy a house, right? He's like, no, you want to buy something that you can hold on to. And of course, this back to the nature question. I didn't know what I didn't know. I was in the hands of somebody who was trying to mentor me without me really knowing it. And I'm so glad he pushed me in the duplex place because I still have it today. The thing will be paid off in a handful of years. We'll have a nice property that's going to cash flow, have a nice asset, stuff like that. But yeah, so I own the one. It probably took 7 or 8 years that I held on to stuff because, of course, everything was underwater and had to kind of come out through that. But when I then met my wife and when we decided to build a house right before we got married, had a good opportunity to divulge the last couple of them and use the money to put down on the house. So it all worked out in the end. It just took a lot longer than it was intended to.
Yeah. All right, let's go into the process before you started Sales Homie. So you get out of the real estate business and then you have a couple of corporate jobs and sliding into leadership and things like that. How many years are we talking here? From when you left your real estate business and got back into corporate to then when you decided you wanted to start Sales Homie?
Yeah, I just, the grand total is easier. So I've been in some sort of selling role for 23 years since coming out of school, I guess it is now, which it's crazy. It's like, wow, that's kind of a big number. Where did that all of a sudden come from? But yeah, it was one of those things where I then left or still had the real estate stuff, but jumped back into a corporate role. I ended up working for a company called Paychex in the payroll, PEO, HR space, was a rep, got opportunities. My first opportunities there to be mentorship to reps before I left was going to be involved in the program to get into the management side of, managing a sales team and so on and so forth. So I was really getting into those next levels of sales organization and leadership, if you will. Had some personal life things happen, which we can get into later, but really a big transition in my life. I ended up being recruited then out of the Paychex world into a facility services world where I spent, I guess, 13 plus years or so in that world now, where it's janitors, security officers, cleaners, window washers, HVAC technicians, so on and so forth, the most recent experience on the executive side, I was afforded the opportunity to be the executive vice president of facility services carve out, which is selling security services. So if you ever go to a mall, and that's a really silly analogy because people make fun of like mall cop and stuff. But anyway, you go to like a high rise downtown Minneapolis, or you go somewhere where there's a security officer desk or presence. Those folks are typically employees of then companies like the one I worked for. And we would basically be a staffing company or a sourcing agent to then the property management groups, the facility services groups, the ownership groups of those properties to help secure the buildings. So I got to come in from the leadership side for the first time. I got to manage the P&L, certainly got to manage the growth and the sales team, created a domestic sales team for the first time. We grew the P&L from, I think we were about a $35 million carve out of a greater enterprise at the time to, made it to well over 100 million. So it was one of those deals where great experience, formative on the business side, P&L management, managing people, designing processes, coming up with, the selling processes, coming up with customer engagement roadmaps, different things like that. So the other thing with that, I was afforded an executive coach and had a couple different mentors throughout the time. And it was one of those things as well where I was challenged by a mentor at one point. And I think this was when I was 5 years into my corporate role. And they were saying, what's next for Nate? You're the mover, you're the shaker. You've affectionately doubled now. I think we're a $70 or $80 million company at that point. You've doubled the size of your organization. What are you going to do next? And it was kind of like, well, I don't know. I mean, haven't talked about this yet with you, but we'll get there. I have a young family at the time. I had a daughter who was not quite 3, had a newborn son. So I had a young family. So I'm like, I don't know if it makes sense to move right now. Like that's just a lot of things happening in the personal side. And professionally, I was there for 5 years at that point. I'm like, I kind of feel like I can control my job. I don't know if I really want to just all of a sudden move. It's just not the right timing. And the question then was, well, what's the 3, 5, 7, 10? And I said, well, I'd love to get into consulting at some point. And the question was, well, why? It's like, well, a couple of reasons. One, my wife is 9 years younger than me. So I've always had this personal mindset that for us to be able to retire together sometime, there's going to have to be some flux to whatever that looks like down the road, whether she's working for herself, I'm working for myself. I don't want to give away those years just because we happen to be 9 years apart. I want to make sure that we can do all we can to figure that out. Yeah. So the personal piece there was to do consulting towards the end of the career. But the challenge was, he's like, well, you've been a rep, you've been in multiple industries, you've been successful, you've managed reps, you've now built a company, you've done all these growth things outside of taking another position, a higher level role, a C-suite role, air quotes again for those only listening, whatever that looks like. He goes, you can consult tomorrow. It was kind of like oh, whoa. It's like a aha moment for me. So that's where it kind of stemmed. That's how it got there.
So when you look back on, I want to go into a little bit more on the sales homie side of things. So, but one question I have on kind of like that corporate time, let's say, you went from high performing producer into a leadership role, which in my opinion, fails more times than it doesn't. Right. And so what do you think were some triggers that flipped in your head or something like that made you go from being a high performer to then being a little bit more altruistic and pouring into other people, being a better leader?
So, yeah, I think my leadership style and capabilities and strengths have come from just that grit and that drive. And what I mean by that is, back to being a kid, played baseball. I was never the best natural player. I had to work at it. Was a sales rep. Naturally had a lot of success, but I had to work at it. Band world. Performed, was a part of some of these really great ensembles across the organization, across the world, where people would recognize names and stuff if they were in that activity. Audition to be there and make those ensembles, but I had to work at it. In high school, I was not the kid that would look at notes 3 minutes before a test and ace the test. I had to study for 3 hours the night before. So I really associate it with, again, I've always had to work to get things or to get places or do different things in my life. And it's no different from transitioning from individual contributor to then a leadership position. I had to work to understand what that meant, what the characteristics meant. I think because I had that drive and that work ethic just naturally ingrained into me, I've been able to succeed because people have naturally heard of all those experiences where the highest producer does not make the best manager and kind of all those different components to business and to sales, certainly. But I also think there was a component of, again, my developmental background. My mom was that teacher, that coach. I've always really liked teaching and coaching. Again, I did it nonprofit wise through all these musical organizations. So it was a really good correlation that I would make and use to then the professional world. And, communication was all, I was actually communications major in college, which we didn't touch on. So I remember I had to take all the different, certainly, giving speeches type communication classes to interpersonal communications. What really afforded me to get into that degree program was I was in an organizational comm class where the class was set up by a adjunct professor that would come in who worked in a business career herself. And the whole class wasn't about homework and tests and studying. It was, we're going to create this ecosystem. We're going to create a business. I'm going to give you a problem. You're going to assign yourself in a business unit within this pretend company. You're going to present then to the, again, business owner or leader of this, company at the end about your solutions for whatever problem I'm giving you. So it was an easy in for me at the time because I didn't have the best grades to get into, say, to Carlson, had to work at the school piece to get by too. So I think I just always come back to that. I've had to work for things. So it's no different when I've transitioned from, again, producer to leader. It's like I had to learn. I've always been curious. What I've always loved about sales and in selling roles in general is I obviously don't have to sit behind a desk all day, but at the same time, I've been able to explore. You'll appreciate this because we're the same age. I think about it as like reading Rainbow or Mr. Rogers, right? Like you'd go out and you'd see these companies, you'd see these manufacturing plants, you'd see these businesses, and you'd go out and you're like, this is really cool. I didn't realize someone is making money doing business, doing X, right? Just that constant learning piece and being, I guess, nimble to the situation is, I guess, how I've succeeded.
So that conversation that you had with your mentor was kind of a little bit of the light bulb went off of like, okay, so this is something that I might want to do. So now as we think about, as you're transitioning into starting to, probably it's more of thoughts and things that you're probably thinking about as you're pushing, as you're cutting the grass and stuff like that of like where this thing could go. Paint a picture now of like, what did Sales Homie, which you probably didn't have that name or whatever at that time, of like what a consultancy looks like then versus, and then now talk about where you're at now and the differences of what you aspired it to be to where it is.
Yeah. So I first started it as a weekly newsletter. So I literally called it, I think, the Sales Homie newsletter. I've since changed the name. It's called the Sales Report. Actually came out this morning, every Friday morning. So go to our website if you want to sign up, saleshomie.com. But yeah, so it started as a newsletter, and I wanted to start creating an online persona, an online brand around being a subject matter expert when it came to sales, strategy, growth, and business, basically. So then if you follow me on LinkedIn, or if you will now going forward, you'll see thought bubbles daily, different kind of salesisms, quotes, business development ideas, philosophies, strategies, so on and so forth. Really stemmed from there first because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know how I was going to build something along the way. Obviously, C9 is where we're at today. In my corporate world, I was a part of Allied Executives. If that's a dirty word or not, I apologize. But at the same time, I got to know different folks within that ecosystem. And as I was hearing and listening to people in my peer group over on that corporate side, every month I would have a different realization from someone telling a story saying, I'm having trouble with sales, I'm having trouble finding a sales rep, having trouble with developing our selling process, having trouble with revenue growth, having trouble with forecasting. The list went on and on and on and on and on. And I just kind of kept coming back to this like, man, there really is something here. There's really some opportunity here where I could step in and be a really great advocate for, instead of then the first half of my professional career selling to small businesses, now the back half of my career, I'm looking at it going, gosh, I can help small businesses get in a place where they can grow and be in a place where they have an amazing story to tell themselves. That's really kind of how it transitioned for myself. So then my first customer that I've acquired on the Sales Homie side came from my Allied world. Just had a conversation on the side, and that ecosystem, of course, was kind of similar to C9. I guess every group's a little bit different, but we would travel to different businesses every month. And they would, of course, paint the picture on, business challenge that they're having. And that individual was talking about fractional CFO, fractional this, whatever. And I was like, there might be something here that I could have a conversation with them to say, hey, I'm looking to kind of get into this. Would this be something that they'd be interested in exploring with me? Long story short, I had the conversation. They were interested, and that kind of spurred the whole thing. And it's really only grown from there. And from a services standpoint, then, as I was, again, experiencing those conversations around peer groups and understanding different ways of revenue, having been in the corporate world, managing the P&L side on the executive side, realizing for Sales Homie, then from a selfish perspective, I want to do all I can to create different lines of revenue for myself too within the business. So we will do fractional executive engagements, whether it's more consulting based, whether it's tactical or strategic. We will do recruiting and placement, which we haven't talked about yet. I align with a great independent recruiter. So we go to market as Sales Homie Recruiting, and there really aren't any folks in town that will dedicate to just sales recruiting. So we're trying to put our stamp on that niche in the market. And then the third leg of the stool is coaching and training. And we have our own small peer group called the Sales Squad, where we bring sales reps together once a month to engage and talk about pipeline deep dives, do business brand building and what it looks like for them online, talk about their small C's, their big C's of selling things through their processes. And then we're also just ready to launch our quarterly sales education series called the Revenue Hangout. So that will be a quarterly series where we'll have a growth leader come in, talk about, share their story of what they did and how they grew their business, give a Q&A session as well, a nice networking opportunity. Again, selfishly BD opportunity for Sales Homie, but again, community builder, engagement, if you will. So yeah, I'm just really excited at the direction everything's going. And C9, quick plug, even though you guys don't need it, C9 has been the absolute best and the only reason why I'm at a place today that I have a functioning business with revenue, that I've met great, wonderful professionals in the Twin Cities, not like yourself, of course. Haha, just kidding. Of course, like Aaron and everybody else. It's just been an amazing experience. And the community is exactly what I was hoping for. And quick shout out to Anton Newman with Fluid, who I know also is a supporter of C9. But when I was running, because my wife actually works for Fluid, so kind of a C9 connection as well. But when I was engaging with Anton and talking to him about the Sales Homie idea, he asked me, he goes, hey, are you going to do any peer groups, or how are you going to network or whatever? And I said, yeah, I just don't know what I don't know yet. He's like, well, if you're looking for a great one, check out C9. And I think that's how you and I went and had breakfast, and the rest, is history. So.
Yeah. And you did a good job of, so let me just say thank you very much. That was 30 seconds of your podcast that you didn't have to dedicate that time to, but I do really, truly appreciate it. But this is about you. So you did a good job of talking through, without it, I'm just going to say right out, listeners can hear this, like on air production meeting. You did a great job of painting a picture of what that Sales Homie experience looks like. And so I'm guessing everybody can go on your website, obviously sign up for your newsletter, sign up for some of the sales squads or the hangout or anything like that. And so that's a great way to be able to also follow you on LinkedIn and stuff like that. So I have a pretty good feel. I have a very good feel, obviously, just because of our relationship, of what Sales Homie is. And I think our listeners have a good feel for it. My question to you, which is a little bit loaded, is why did you decide to go a path to where you wanted to create the content and create your style and everything like that, rather than go with like a pre-labeled, and I'm going to leave names out of it, but we know there's these big national organizations that typically hitch their wagons to a little bit larger organizations or even larger SMB. Why did you decide to create your own curriculum or your own content versus white label something else?
Yeah, loaded question, but I love it. A couple different things. One, I'm a younger guy. We are younger guys. I am not someone who's end of my career looking to slow down into something, looking to provide content over my last 40 years at that point to do something. I'm someone who's smack dab in the middle of my career, still as hungry as ever and wanting to grow something. I gave the analogy to someone the other day about I've spent all of my career building things for others. And even though I tried to do the entrepreneurial thing with real estate back in the day, I still have always had that itch to then build my own thing. And so that's a big reason why I wanted to create a brand. I wanted to create something that naturally I can have success with, but be proud of. And I want to create an organization. This isn't necessarily just what Nate does to fill his time or how Nate, pays his bills. This is, I want to build an organization. I want to build something that's a part of the community. I want to build something that's an asset for others, not just myself, if that makes sense. That would be one thing. And then the second thing is, again, from that creative side, is that right brain or left brain? I'm forgetting how that went, but from whatever side of the brain the creative piece was, again, back to the musical backgrounds and so on and so forth. So I spent all those years writing music, designing shows, designing programming in that idiom. And so always kind of having and approaching life, both in business and personally, through that visual lens. I've always held those creative juices to create things and to build things, which is why corporate sales before Sales Homie was always really a great place for me. It allowed me to be a little bit ADD, allowed me a little bit kind of everywhere, didn't force me to sit behind a desk every day, allowed me to have relationship building and be out in the communities and so on and so forth. But it also allowed me to be creative. It also allowed me, it forced me then to be creative from an objection perspective of getting an objection from somebody, which you got to navigate around to get the sale, that kind of thing. So I think those couple of reasons is to answer your question, sort of why I felt I wanted to create something as opposed to quote unquote hitch my wheel to something. And I just think there's more opportunity when you can create something fresh and brand new as opposed to just, being the next franchise or being the next, again, name with associated with a bigger, again, shop or something like that. So you didn't ask the question, but I'll tell you anyway. So people always ask, how did Sales Homie, where'd the name come from?
Yeah, that was my final question before we transition to 9 questions. So good.
Okay.
We're on the same page. Love it, dude.
Yes, ESP. So it's COVID, right? And when COVID happened in 2020, again, coming from that sales world, I was like, this is horrible. I have to stay at home. I can go outside of my driveway. That's about it, right? Like, this is horrible. I'm the person that feeds off of people. I'm out and about, getting dressed every day, like doing the whole thing. And after about a year, I was like, you know what? This actually might be okay. I don't have to get dressed. I haven't worn a suit since. I don't have to white knuckle commute twice a day, all those sort of things. And then, so during COVID, then naturally the creative juices are going. I'm like, what can I do? A little bit bored, whatever else. And my buddies, probably maybe like you too, we have this text group where we're always like, once in a while, like, hey, business idea, and we'll like throw something out and everybody will shoot it down or whatever. So we've always had that kind of creative piece to my closest friends too. And so I'm like, gosh, we're all stuck at home. How are we going to then allow ourselves to function best at home? So I was going to create a company called Gadget Homie. So I had all of these smart home devices and none of them were syncing together. And I'm like, I'm actually in my house now. I have to be in my house. Gosh, wouldn't it be cool if all these things actually worked? So I was like, man, I think there's something here. So I think I'll never forget, my wife and I were on the couch and just kind of thinking through names, and it was like, oh, Gadget Homie, play on home, gadget. That's cool. And so it kind of just stuck with that. I tried to spin something up. I guess you could call that my second, entrepreneurial endeavor, if you will. Never really went anywhere. Had the website, had a couple people that were going to be my homies that were going to go out and, think of it like a really watered down version of like the Geek Squad or something, right? But same kind of concept. And again, realized it didn't go anywhere. I needed to have much more money to put into it, resources. I just didn't know what I didn't know, et cetera. So anyway, just kind of mothballed it. But then as I was coming across, what am I going to do with this consultancy idea? What would I call it? Obviously, sales is really what I want to do. And actually, so quick plug, I used to have a podcast. It was called the BizX Podcast. We did about 8 or 9 episodes. I had a buddy that did it and he kind of faltered out. So then the podcast faltered out. You can probably still search for it and find it on SoundCloud and some other things like that. I did a YouTube series called 2 Quick Things, where I was trying to be, again, influencing, talking about just different business jargon and things happening. And I lost traction there because it was way too high. It was 230,000 feet. So again, back to the consulting thing, it was like, this has to be just sales. It's sales, because revenue generation sales is what I'm most passionate about, what I've done. So I'm like, what could I call it? Sales, what? Sales. I'm like, oh, homie, sales. I'm like, oh, Sales Homie. Like, that's kind of cool. I'll just kind of steal the name that I used with the thing before. So long story short, that's how I became Sales Homie, and that's where the name came from.
I love it. Thank you for taking, that was my last question. I had it written down here. Be sure and ask this question. So good, man. We got to jump to 9 questions. So we're going to take a quick break. This will be another opportunity for people to get to know you a little bit better. I'm going to ask you some off the wall questions. So let's take a quick break, listen to some of our community supporters like Sales Homie and Nate, and we'll be right back with 9 questions with Nate.
The topic of talent is hot in organizations of any size, and I would argue none more than small to mid-sized businesses. That's why it's crucial to have a partner to help you navigate all the HR idiosyncrasies so you can focus on working on your business and not in it. Insperity is a full-service HR partner with a high-touch, high-tech platform helping owners work through challenges like employee retention, company culture, and benefits, just to name a few. Do yourself a favor and explore all they have to offer at Insperity.com. Insperity, HR that makes a difference. When you think of a typical CPA firm, you probably think of tax planning. Well, that just scratches the surface of what Boulay offers their clients. By providing smart, in-depth thinking from experts in accounting, audit, tax, and business consulting, they know what it takes to achieve financial success. Whether it's protecting your business, building your wealth, or securing your future, you can count on Boulay to go beyond addressing just financial matters and providing you with tailor-made, workable solutions. Learn about all they have to offer at BoulayGroup.com. Boulay, helping you get there. Mason Jar Marketing helps businesses bridge the gap between marketing and sales so they can crush goals. They're a collaborative partner, one who translates strategic priorities into actionable, goal-aligned tactics. You can count on them to deliver creative expertise and flawless execution for all marketing channels, no hand-holding required. If you're ready for a partner who listens well, thinks big, acts fast, and drives results, schedule a complimentary marketing needs assessment at masonjarmarketing.com. As a boutique Twin Cities-based investment banking firm, Madeira Partners works closely with family, founder, and management-owned businesses, bringing over 25 years of experience and hundreds of successful transactions to the table. It's in their DNA to educate owners on what potential exit opportunities look like, along with any industry or company-specific things to think about to make your business more attractive to potential buyers. Regardless if you want to sell tomorrow or in 10 years, the team at Madeira Partners would love to provide their expertise and guidance along the way. Take some time to explore their website at madeirapartners.com. Madeira Partners, your life's work deserves our best work. Tradition Capital Bank is a local bank that has the products and capabilities to service middle market companies, nonprofits, and their owners, employees, and families by offering a high-touch approach paired with customizable solutions. Think of them as your nimble ally serving with generosity, care, and precision. Tradition starts with the assumption that there's always more to learn, try, and discover, aiming to find the best yes for whomever they have the privilege of working beside. From a foundation of trust, Tradition takes disciplined, smart risks to help people grow beyond what they even thought possible. Tradition Capital Bank is the second largest privately owned bank headquartered in the Twin Cities, and with locations in Edina, Wayzata, and North Oaks, Minnesota, alongside their office in Scottsdale, Arizona, Tradition Capital Bank is committed to big bank offerings with a small bank ethos. Let their team be the friend you need in your next financial move. Kaisa Wealth Management treats each client like a member of the family. Acting as your personal CFO, we are fiercely devoted to your financial prosperity. At Kaisa, our wealth strategies are aligned with your core values, creating a wealth plan centered around legacies you wish to create. This is our Kaisa commitment. Our wealth strategies are dynamic and tailor-made for your long-term goals because as a fee-only investment firm, excellence in service is not just a promise, it's our baseline. Whether it's selling a business, planning succession, creating a legacy, navigating life challenges like death or divorce, supporting executives on the move, planning retirement, or preserving family wealth, we are here for you. Find out how we can help to simplify your wealth at kaisawealth.com. In addition to our amazing prospering and thriving level supporters, we want to shine a spotlight on our equally amazing evolving level supporters: Alliant Insurance Services, Bauer Design Build, Beyond Design Resource Group, Entrabank, Fluid Interiors, and Modern Foundation. All of the Coalition 9 community supporters can be found at coalition9.com/community-supporters. All right, we're back here with Nate Zoellner from Sales Homie, and I got 9 questions locked and loaded for him, ready to go. Nate, can you confirm to me you have no idea what I'm about to ask you?
Zero. I remember on the form I filled out before this, just the, hey, let's get together and know each other a little bit. It was something about, is any question open or can I ask any question? Yeah. I said, any questions open. So yeah, I have no idea. No clue.
Good. All right. Question 1. What is the first album you ever owned?
Ooh, probably in 4th grade. It was the New Kids on the Block cassette tape.
Ooh, good.
I don't know what they called it, but I think it was that one. The first CD I bought was Billy Joel River of Dreams.
Oh, that's a good CD too. I remember I bought that CD too early on in my journey.
Yeah.
Sweet. What is one thing that immediately brightens your day?
Ooh, smile for my kids.
Good one, right? And we talked enough about your kids. I do typically like to talk about family. We talked about Becky and 2 kids, and I saw your dog walking around in the back there. So you got
is she? Yeah. She likes 100%. The sunbathe. Yeah.
Yep. 100% good girl. All right. What is the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Oh man, strangest thing I've ever eaten. I'm a pretty adventurous eater. I would say probably like escargot or something like that, even though it's not strange, but strange from a texture and like not just an everyday meal.
Yeah. And that is strange. I've had eel before and it's disgusting. And I know it's pretty
in
the sushi side of things, but they had a thing on escargot because of the Olympics being in France. And it's fascinating on how they harvest those and stuff like that. It makes you not want to ever eat that.
No, I'm good.
Yep. What is one quality in a person that impresses you?
One quality in a person that impresses me. I would say being genuine, being their true self. We talked a little bit about this kind of pre-podcast, but one of the things that I've associated with success in sales is being open and transparent as a person. And, people buy from people they trust, people build relationships with people they trust. And if you're not open and genuine, it's really hard to build that relationship and trust. So
it's a sixth sense that people have that they can sniff bullshit and they can sniff fakeness out really well. So I am with you wholeheartedly on that one. What do you enjoy spending money on? What is one thing you enjoy spending money on?
My wife would laugh. Shoes.
Really?
Yeah, but it's funny because super awkward story. One of my feet is a little bit bigger than the other. My right foot, for whatever reason, it's like a half the size bigger than my left, whether it's
Yeah.
because it's dominant or something like that. So I am not that I buy a lot of shoes because I end up wearing them all, but I buy a lot because I have a hard time finding shoes that just feel good and fit. So literally, and I can literally think back in my bedroom, there's 2 sets of shoes in boxes sealed that I've never opened, but I bought them.
Yeah.
I just bought a bunch of more like the Hey Dude things for summertime because those are easy and easy slip-ons and stuff. But try to get big into like the Jordan Air ones for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know. Shoes is something I'm like, yeah, man, let's try it.
I love it. I love it. What is one thing you have deep gratitude for right now?
I guess I could go a lot of different ways, but I would just say we talked a lot about the formative years. I would say my parents, in a way, even though I don't express that to them, or I don't get an opportunity to express it to them, did not bring up the fact that I lost my mom to breast cancer 15 years ago and stuff like that, which is a big formative piece for me. But that it's probably them. And just, again, the older I get into adulthood, the further I get having my own kids now, different things like that, understanding the challenges that they would go through or that they went through with raising myself or my sister, probably just that, my parents, and, just being super grateful for the opportunities they gave us, whether it was inherently to move to the Twin Cities. I mean, I can't imagine, I joked with my parents for a long time when I was back in school and college. It's like, I can't imagine what life would be different if you did not move us to the Twin Cities. Like if I was still in small town rural Wisconsin, like how would life be different? I would not be doing any of the things I'm doing. I would not have been able to experience all the things I've experienced. I would not be here at sales homie more than likely. I mean, just so many different things. So certainly the parentals is a big gratitude piece.
Yeah, and we didn't go into that you lost your mom at in 2009, but I think my wife is a breast cancer survivor. I lost my dad a couple of years ago, and I think those types of like life-changing, life-altering situations make you really look at how finite life is, and probably was a little bit of gas on your entrepreneurial journey of being like,
100%, 100%.
I'm taking this leap because, I may not be here tomorrow. So I just want to give a shout out to that aspect of things, and maybe a little bit of a shout out to your mom in a little bit of a different way. So,
right on.
If you could give a TED talk on anything except something related to your career. So I'm going to say anything except sales, what would it be?
Probably marching band, the marching arts, I'll call it. And just again, how formative it was for me, the different components of what it means, what it is, working in nonprofit, working with students, being a lead voice for then somebody to be, a mentor to help guide, so on and so forth. It would absolutely be something on how creative marching arts or creative arts in general can prosper you and catapult you to in any sort of career you want within the world.
Love it. I wanted to close the loop on this. Before we started the podcast, I talked about Jason Springer. Did you guys make a connection on band? Because he was a big band. He was a big band guy at the U of M about the same time you were.
We did. So he sends out a monthly newsletter, and I got his newsletter, and on part of his newsletter was like, hey, what I'm up to over the next month. And there was something about BOA, which stands for Bands of America. It's like a high school circuit where marching bands will do competitions across the country. And his kids go to Eastview High School in Apple Valley. And it was like, oh yeah, going to Bands of America show in St. Louis. And I was like, stop the train. I'm like, wait, what? Because we had not talked about the band thing. And so I emailed them. I'm like, next time we have our next coaching session, you and I need to talk band. So we talked for the next coaching session for half an hour or something instead of working stuff. But no, I didn't know it, but know it now. And he actually knows a good buddy of mine, probably one of my best friends, through the marching band program, which I was a buddy with in college. So
another proof that small world, man.
Small world.
Share 3 words that describe you, quick fire style.
Energetic, trustworthy, happy-go-lucky.
Love it. Good. Check.
Yeah.
Last question. Those went fast. If you could go on a weekend vacation with any 2 people on earth, but not your wife or family, so nobody in your family, who would they be and why?
Probably, you're fine. My dog's here barking for those not watching on YouTube.
I love it.
She's right here. Here she is.
Yeah,
this is Winnie.
Yeah, she's 100% good girl.
Any 2 people, I would say, I don't know, probably somebody from business. So Elon Musk, that would be a really interesting dialogue, and just seeing all the crazy that he thinks. Yeah. And then let's bring a sports connection into it. So I would say somebody like who was a big sports guy, even though Kirby Puckett is not with us anymore. I'd say someone like him, or who else did I grow up idolizing? Robin Yount, Brewers.
Robin, yeah.
Who else is the Paul Molitor? That'd be kind of pretty cool. Pick a Hall of Famer, I guess. That'd be kind of fun.
All right, sweet. That's a hard question, isn't it?
It is a hard question. I'm like, man, where do I go?
You're going to have something to think about after this. Yeah. Well, hey, I want to wrap up here because I try and keep it close to an hour because I don't want to lose anybody. Right. And so, but this is a super important part of this podcast is how can people find you? I mean, we've talked about your website and LinkedIn and all that stuff. Share as much or as little as you want for how people can get a hold of you and get to know you better.
Yeah, awesome. So obviously saleshomie.com website, have everything there that you would need. You can follow me on socials. You can find me on LinkedIn, at Nate Zoellner. You can find me on X, or what used to be Twitter, at Nate Zoellner. Email me, nate@saleshomie.com. I mean, it's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory, but yeah, I feel like I try to be pretty present in the social world and just present online, I guess, if you will. So I won't give my cell phone number out for this, but at the same time, it's one of those things where I tell people, text me, don't email me. Like I'm going to see a text and respond to that way quicker than I am an email or something. So, but yeah, you can find me easily through the Sales Homie website or any of my socials.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been awesome to have you part of the community. Obviously, to have you as a community supporter is huge because nobody does anything remotely close to what you do. Plus, I love supporting small business. And I'll tell you, the other thing is the feedback that I've gotten from people that have met you and have started to explore bringing you on as a consultant or something like that has been outstanding. And you're crushing it, dude. Like you've got a handful of clients already. I know a few of them. They've raved about the work that they're doing with you. So, in a roundabout way, I also want to give like a full-fledged endorsement of the work that you do. I'm a sales guy. Sales is an art. And I think you really got to be passionate about that art side of things. And you've clearly done that. So anybody who's looking for a little bit of help on the revenue side of things, I believe Nate's your guy. So you keep crushing it. And I don't doubt in a hot second that, in a year, if we just have you back on the podcast or something like that, the picture of Sales Homie is going to look very different because of the growth that you've had.
I really appreciate that. I've just been having so much fun. That's really what it comes down to. Just, it's so much fun, and finding your passion, being able to niche down a little bit. Yes, business is business, but for me, it's all about driving revenue, driving sales, closing the deal, being strategic on how you get the deal, how you move the needle. And it's been great. Like I already mentioned, getting to know everyone. There's too. Quick plug also, I'll be the supporter to put something Emily said in the grab bag or in the, am I giving away too much or not?
Well, members only are going to the Saints game. So you're talking to our
members. Okay. Well, I'm talking to the members, but I have a really cool insert that I'm putting into there. So I'm really excited for people to see it. Yeah.
Good. Well, that gives a reason to people that are thinking about being a member.
Sign up for C9. Let's go. Be a member.
All right, brother. Well, great job on the podcast today. On behalf of Nate, the Sales Homie, this has been the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert, and I want to thank you for the privilege of your time.